Now, if I want to come to you a second, because I think when you told the story at the start, the partnerships that you needed in order to take this to the next step were pretty crucial. And it did sound like you had a few doors that you could knock on, and they would open. And as you tell the story, you've got to, just for translation purposes, just slightly slower, even though I am absolutely in your camp that the more we can say in the fastest time is the best. But for translation?
Just give them more coffee.
Okay.
So basically, the success factors for us, one of them, some of them have been luck, and some of them have been kind of positioning. So on the positioning, the believability of the project and the person behind it. So for me, 10 years ago, I was a clinical psychologist working at Bellevue Hospital with survivors of political torture. That was my background. And so my patients came out of Arab prisons because I speak Arabic. There are people there from all over the world. We don't have a monopoly on how to mistreat others. I just didn't speak the other languages. But basically, the story I kept hearing again and again of people growing up to idolize their leaders as heroes only to be tortured by them. And torture is a terrible enough thing as it is, but when you're tortured by your hero, that kind of breaks you on many levels. And so I started thinking about my own kids and who their heroes are going to be. And so I took a break, went to business school, got my MBA. And so the idea of a psychologist, business person trying to raise financing for something to create something with psychological archetypes made sense for people who wanted to invest. So that's the first thing. The second thing was about the partnerships, right?
Yeah.
So everything we've done, like the TV series, we did a partnership with Endemol, who are the largest TV producers in the world, right? Big Brother, Star Academy. The writers, initially, if you think you've done anything difficult in your life, imagine being in New York City 18 months after 9/11, trying to convince people to create superheroes based on Islamic archetypes. That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to buy a magazine and bring the staff in, and then actually eventually sold the magazine to Demand Media, but was able to get the core team to get to know me and my motivations, and they stayed behind with my project. So that was the third thing. Was, one of the first things as a business, when you create something new, the more things that are new involved, the less likely it's going to succeed. And so I knew from day one what I wanted to do here was the only thing different was going to be what inspires the characters. It's been done before. I mean, Batman, Superman are all based on biblical archetypes, right? Like the prophets, they all get their message from above through a messenger. The prophets get it from God through Gabriel. But Peter Parker's in the library taking a photograph when the spider comes in from above and gives him his message through a bite. Superman sent from another planet or from the heavens to Earth.
Yeah.
And he sent in a pod like Moses was on the Nile to new parents. And you hear the voice of his father saying to Earth, I have sent to you my only son. Right? That's God in the Bible about Jesus. But the storylines are secular. This has been done before. It just hasn't. My pitch to my investors is the only people using the Quran for mass media have been the bad guys.
Yeah.
So let me get in there, pull up constructs, secularize them, and create new storylines based on them and challenge them for that mind space. So it's a method that's been used before. It just hasn't been used in our culture. So that was something that I imported. And then there are a lot of linkages. So for example, the 99's powers all come from the stones. Those stones have within them the collective civilization of the world as espoused in the great library of Baghdad that was sacked in 1258. So I rewrote that story. It's a story in the mind of kids in this part of the world. The books get thrown in the river changes color with ink. I rewrote it in the sense that that information was saved onto 99 stones. So we never lost that wisdom. And that's how the powers of the 99 come. They come from this collective wisdom and from knowledge. So there's a so there's another example of how I borrowed. So King Arthur, the King Arthur story.
Yeah.
King Arthur was the only one that can pull that sword out of a stone, right? So that story, that idea or that metaphor I borrowed in the sense that it's not anybody who picks up a stone that becomes a hero. The stone has to choose you. So I use constructs that are readily available in popular culture.
Yeah.
I just use them to position my own storyline in a way where it's not just coming from outer space, where the only thing different is that Islam connection.
But you deliberately understood the capacity to take those stories, to do the translation into a secular context, but in a really powerful way. But you also had the ambition to reach again in the same way that WizKids was a concept that would reach millions. Your ambition from the start was the same?
It was the same. It was to be. I mean, for me, I wasn't looking at our market here because our market here can't support something that's this.
Yeah.
I mean, the animation is in 3D CGI. The writing's in Hollywood. The same writers behind Star Wars and Ben 10 and Batman. It's a top tier thing. And so the only way this can be successful is it's actually bought into in the Western markets.
Yeah.
And you can't go into the Western market saying this is Islam because it's secularized content. I mean, the Bible is known as the greatest story ever told. And if that's true, the Quran surely is the greatest story most told because people pray 5 times a day, right? And so and those stories have survived. And so the idea is let's kind of give it a 2.0 kind of update in terms of storylines where what I'm sharing is what Islam shares with the rest of humanity.
Yeah. Okay. So let me come back to you in a moment. But Reza, explain this to me, because the personal agency, the passion, the commitment, the vision, the creativity is clearly part of the success that enables you to think about vision from the start, an enterprise of your kind as well. And you had a sense that you were going to reach literally millions of young children and women?
Did they got enough coffee after interpreting? Well, what I have done actually, it was in a 2 different level. And the first level was I wanted to train people to hold these powerful tools, which is the tools of the freedom, which is the tools of the communication, which is photography, video, writings, radio, communication. This was my first step. But then, through them, through those local people, creating programs, radio program for a whole nation, creating the films for the whole international TVs, through them telling their own stories, then this goes beyond the boundaries. Then it goes beyond even what I dream of it. Like, just an example, for the 25 years of the war in Afghanistan, I realized that we are only getting information through the male journalists all over the world. They go to Afghanistan because it was too difficult to send women there, journalists. And those male journalists, who they are talking to, is male Afghans. So the whole world's getting information only about 50% of Afghans. There are men. So what's happened to the women's stories? They have lived through the wars, and I have been there. I knew how difficult and how suffering was for the Afghan women to go through all these wars. Who can tell their stories? The Afghan women themselves. So we start trainings, dozens of the Afghan women to become filmmakers, documentary makers, all right? 1-year trainings. What was the result? They have done till now in the 10 years more than 30 documentaries only on Afghan women. Those documentaries not only have been shown all over the world, the PBS TV on prime time, you know, the National Geographic Channel on prime time, and all over the world, French TVs shown those films done by Afghan women, explaining the Afghan women's stories. They got the nominated to Emmy Award, the first documentary ever done. So this is only one example, but radio has the same, the magazine doing the same, and mobile cinema doing the same. So we can just talk about the values that is measurable, because these are the things that I can say. We trained thousands of people, that we have 8 units of the mobile, that we have 5 million people listening to radios. But everybody knows here, we are all, and I'm really glad to talk to this audience, which they are all professionals and passionate about education. You all know what is meaning the beyond boundary when you have done a 1-hour documentary done by Afghan women and shown in the 40 TV in the world. We cannot measure what has brought to the people, how many hundreds of the million people has gone through this. So everything's happened there. Now I'm, as I said, started in Sri Lanka, started in Uganda, and not only there, starting in the European suburbs, because some of the European suburbs is as bad or as the same thing as the Kabul or Uganda refugee camps. People, European people, they know about it. We have the suburb, which the human relation is totally blown up, that they need really come up with new ideas of creating. So all of the things is that we can measure, we cannot measure what is bring the values. We cannot measure what's happened to the mind of these hundreds of the million people that have seen those films about the world.
But you do know that your motivation to reach into the hearts and souls of people, to build relationship, to reclaim humanity, that continues to be the motivation that drives you?
It's absolutely. I'm taking my example as of one person becoming as an architect. Actually, I'm an architect, but I moved to the photography when I got to understand the importance of these tools and the magazines. And I know when I understand what one person like me can do in the world through his works, and now I have trainings at tens of the thousands, and I know that is going to be, this is the 21st century's education will be done through images and by images. And this is the language of our new education. And I'm really pushing on it, I'm moving on it, and I understand that how important it is that you can talk to everybody. You know, the only things is that like 5,000 years ago when we invented the writings, now we have to invent how to teach people to read images, to read videos.
Yeah. John, let me ask you this. As you hear the other stories and you reflect on your own and your own motivation about the dignity of young people and their worth and the way in which you build relationships through community, the way in which you deliberately went about that, and what's your ambition in relation to the network of schools and the way in which they in turn are able to amplify this work beyond their own institutional boundaries?
There's a lot in that question, I think, Tony. But let's see. We already established that we're 24 schools. We've been in existence. It was 15 years ago. This was an idea.
Yeah.
Today it's 6,500 kids in 24 schools, earning $32 million last year for their own education. That's a whole new source of funding for private education. But let's see. When we began, first of all, it's a privilege. I'm just so excited about this whole idea of imaging and all getting the new trends and where this whole thing about education has to go. When we first began the school, I think it was in the first month, we had hired a counseling service to counsel our students. And at the end of the first month, the counselor came in and he said, don't talk to these students about the future. He said they don't believe in the future. There is no future for them. The reality for them is right now. Too many of their friends don't have no future because they didn't make it, because they've been shot down or they're in jail, or it's too many of their friends have no future whatsoever. Well, that counselor was absolutely wrong. That's the last time I've ever heard a complaint like that. What our system does is open the door to a future, and that's the repercussion of this whole thing on society. It opens the door to the future that these kids have, that they never dreamed was possible for them. We've begun to track our graduates, and we have the National Student Clearinghouse tells us, so this is a third party, this isn't stuff that we've made up or stuff that we've self-reported. We're told from outside that 82% of those who graduated in 2008, 2009, and 2010, 82% have gone on to college. And of those who have began in college in freshman year, 87% of those have gone on to second year college. So this is the same audience that Mr. Sachs was talking about yesterday morning. These are the Latinos. These are the African Americans that abandon studies just in the United States. Just the most frequent thing is that they abandon their studies. And our kids, there's something about this work program. We call it our secret sauce. There's something that the kids learn by having to work. Imagine what it means when we have to tell this 15-year-old that the law firm that you were working at doesn't want you back. Oh, my Lord. What an educational experience that is. Now, when that does happen, and it does happen, then we take that young person and we retrain them. We retrain them for working in the office. We teach our students how to say hello. We teach our students how to dress professionally. We teach our students how to look a person in the eye. We teach our students, we encourage them to ask questions. And those are all tremendous qualities that they learn and use all the way through their high school and then into college. We've changed our goal 4 times. Our first goal was to open a school. Our second goal was to get them through high school. The third goal was to get them into college, and now it's how many of the kids who begin freshman year in one of our schools end it with a college degree. So that's our goal right now.